Spooky Fam, and welcome back to True Horrors. I am your host, Mercy Desdemona. I hope all is well with you. I will apologize first and foremost if I seem a little tired in this episode. I have been working tirelessly on a bunch of goals that I have to get accomplished before spring, and it's been a very long winter. So, without further ado, tonight's crime is death by chocolate, caused by Cordelia Botkin in 1898. If you are new here and you like true crime, horror films, weird theories, and you're basically the weird kid grown weird adult, please hit the subscribe button and join the Spooky Fam, and you can check all my links in the description. And without further ado, let's get into it. So, who was Cordelia? Cordelia was a 44-year-old woman who was married to a Mr. Botkin, but she fancied Mr. John Dunning. Mr. John had a Mrs. John, and so Cordelia kinda, met up with him in secret. They started having an affair. She left her husband, and she ultimately convinced John to leave his wife as well. So, they move in together, they got their life settled, but she always felt like this fear that John was going to leave her too or go back to his ex-wife. So she thought, why don't I just send anonymous, creepy letters to his ex-wife to keep her from even trying to contact him or come near him? Because that is completely the right thing to do, apparently. Well, that's what she did. On to the crime. So, Mr. John was a reporter, and he was off on an assignment. So Cordelia was left at the house alone. And of course, those fears were stirring in her mind. Instead of, finding a good hobby or something like that, she decided, hey, light bulb moment, why don't I send an anonymous letter and a box of chocolates laced with arsenic to Mrs. Dunning? That way, I could put this fear to rest because she's gone. She won't get a chance to have John again, I guess that's what her thought process was. I don't know. I wasn't there. Well, she was the first person to use the U.S. postal system to commit a murder. And this is also the first crime that had two states involved. So it was actually a big deal for the time. When she sent the chocolates to Mrs. Dunning and her sister-in-law, 2 children consumed the candy. The children, however, were able to survive the poisoning. Mrs. Dunning and her sister-in-law did not. The cool thing about this, and not really the cool thing about this, but the smart thing that Mrs. Dunning must have done, and I'm just guessing, is when she got the anonymous letters in the past, she must have told her father, because her father was able to identify the writing of the anonymous letter on the candy to the anonymous letters that were previously sent. Now, I'm guessing that maybe because it was just letters, that they didn't really take it seriously, they didn't make a report of them because they thought it was just somebody playing a cruel joke or something like that. I don't know. But putting the 2 and 2 together, they were able to take it to police, and he was, I say they, but he was able to take it to police, and the police from there on were able to trace it back to Cordelia. So that is her crime, which I still don't understand. It's not like, there really, upon research, there really wasn't anything that showed that Mrs. Dunning was even being a problem. So I don't really. Women, am I right? I don't know. I have no idea. Well, she was found guilty in 1898, but she denied any guilt. She's like, it wasn't me. She's like, didn't do it. But of course, they had solid proof that she did it. And unfortunately for Mr. Dunning, her doing this basically ruined his career. So instead of just, maybe talking to her new man about her situation in her head or something like that, or just living their best life. She basically ruined both of their lives. Like, she ended up being convicted in 1898 for the murders. Then again, she was, let me check my notes real quick. Yeah, she was convicted of murders again in 1904. And she was sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1910, she died in San Quentin prison. According to her death certificate, she was 56 when she passed away, and the cause of death was very, very interesting, and let me make sure I'm reading this right. Softening of the brain due to melancholy, which is a polite way of saying this lady was a little bit nuts. So, that was the case of Cordelia Botkin, and because this episode is a little short, I'm going to check my notes here. I'm going to share with you my favorite odd death that I've read. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, like, I enjoy people dying. No. But there's this silly death, which I'm going to be doing a little series on odd deaths as well while we make a prop. So I'm not going to spoil all of it. But my favorite one, and this one was called Killed as a Zombie. And this was one where a funeral was going on and the lid of a coffin opened up. The person inside actually woke up and started to climb out. So the whole town was like freaking out, and everybody at the funeral was freaking out. And they were like, oh my god, this zombie creature is gonna cause so much harm. And they started screaming and grabbing pitchforks and torches, you know, like people back in the old days did. And the priest was the only one to realize that the person wasn't the living dead, but in fact somebody who was in a coma and had woken up. But unfortunately for the poor soul who was in a coma, the priest couldn't calm the town down, and ultimately they sent him back to the other side. So that is a odd way to die, but also really, really cruel. But definitely odd. And why it was my favorite odd one was because it's just so like bonkers events. Like, could you imagine being the townspeople? Because back then they didn't really know about a bunch of stuff that we know now, and they're just freaking out, thinking like, "Oh my god, the living dead!" You know, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overtired. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. True Horrors will be out every other Tuesday. We're gonna get into deeper and weirder cases now that I have more research time, and Weird Theories is coming out on Thursday. So you don't want to miss out on that. It is H.H. Holmes, and I had the H.H. Holmes video recorded before. However, the audio frigged up, so I had to redo it. However, I lost my notes, so I had to research again. And the weirdest thing is, like, about 6 of the weird theories that I had bookmarked, all of it was scrubbed from the internet. So it's pretty bizarre that they're trying to scrub some weird shit from this guy. But anyway, hope you tune into that, and I will see you then. Bye.